we're going to be going over my thoughts behind the new Colossals update, and we're going to be going over my theories for the next upcoming Colossals. Inside of the game, we have 15 potential Colossals that are going to be a part of the Colossal Conundrum. So we have Plant Island, which is already happening inside of the game. Then we have a total of 15 Colossals that are going to be coming. And if you count the Mirror Islands, that goes up to a whopping 20 Colossals that we could end up awakening through the Colossal Conundrum puzzles. Of course, though, you do have to keep in mind that the Amber, Oasis, and Haven Colossal all share the same Colossal spirit, but seeing as though the Conundrum is quite likely to work in the fashion that you're going to be puzzling up the pieces for each individual island, we're going to have a total of 20 or 15 puzzles here, which is quite a lot of puzzles, and I think it's going to be quite hard for us to achieve them all in the grand scheme of things. If we're looking at the other islands, it's likely that those islands are going to take a drastically larger amount of time potentially than Plant Island. I think they might stick to the 32-day model where it's going to take 32 days for each Colossal. That could end up being 480 to 640 days to get every single Colossal in the game. That's almost 2 years of getting the Colossals, and that's if the daily puzzle does not take any longer. So in this first reaction video, when we were saying this is easy, this is not easy, and I think this honestly therefore does contribute towards how much of a grand thing the Colossals are. I mean, if we're looking at it, that's gonna be probably the largest amount of time you're gonna be spending towards achieving anything inside of the game. So if we're looking at it from that perspective, it could be classed as the hardest thing. Even though it's quite easy to log in game, you've got to keep up that streak, and logging in that huge amount of time is going to take a large amount of dedication from players. This daily thing, can we talk about this for a sec? I opened up my daily Colossal Conundrum today, and I was welcomed towards 10 whopping diamonds. 10 diamonds, baby. Every single diamond counts to me in my Steam game. And let me tell you, when I saw them 10 diamonds, I were all set for this Colossal Conundrum. Them 10 diamonds absolutely secured it for me. There's quite a lot of cool prizes in this, especially for people that are going to be starting out in the game. I imagine this is going to be quite helpful. I was originally a bit skeptical behind it, but now I've been playing it for quite a bit. It is quite a cool mechanic, and it's really cool to see the different maps that have been a part of the fan base for a large amount of time, and the different ways that they use to discover things now be used for the Colossals themselves. That's a really cool aspect that I've been enjoying now and participating in. For each Colossal out of the 15 that we have, I expect we're going to follow the map order of all of these islands, with potentially the Mirror Islands coming last if those do come, but I expect that we're going to be going around the map, so we'll probably go with Cold Island being as next Colossal and the following natural islands in that order. I think it's going to be quite interesting though down the line to see how Composer and Tribal and the Colosseum might work in terms of awaiting the Colossals, because those islands are quite different, and islands that haven't been updated, like Sugarbush Island, is that even going to happen? I think that's going to be quite interesting with the Colossals Conundrum, as seeing how those work in comparison to the rest, I do think is going to be quite different. It might not be the way the Colossals have been described or theorized to come, seeing as though it's always been described to be a huge amount of energy, but you know what? It works. We don't know much about the Colossi structure, but I imagine that that will explain quite a lot towards how the Colossals were awoken in the first place. Not just that, guys, but we do know from each Colossal that they are going to be singing. If we head on over to the Big Blue Bubble website, it describes that the deep, sonorous voices of the Colossals will be heard for the first time upon awakening all of these Colossals. Sombrous means it's going to be quite a deep and full voice, and therefore I'm expecting possibly a hum out of the Colossals, and probably to get different voices out of every Colossal spirit that we're going to be encountering. The Colossals inside of the islands, these huge land masses, and I don't think they're going to be making sounds that quite caused an earthquake, and therefore I'm expecting them to be, even though they're quite deep and somber sounds, for them still to be quite light in tone, and for them to potentially sing in the more lighter verses behind the song so that they can contribute in a much more lighter way. I don't expect them to be quite overbearing inside of the song. That's something that I'm particularly expecting out of them. And for Plant Island, I'm expecting for the Plant Island Colossal to play inside of the Everything Here's Alive verses. That feels like the perfect part to have some kind of a hum side of the song, so I would expect for them to play there. And just thinking about how the Plant Plant Island Colossal is going to animate inside of the song is a really exciting aspect to me. We've seen inside of the cutscene how it's going to awaken, but imagining how it's going to sing is the most exciting bit, so I'm really excited towards how that's been left out. It's going to be one of the best top 10 moments for me out of the game, just seeing how this ends up coming together at the end of the 32 days, which actually is going to arrive on the 14th of January, which is a sad day, guys. So if you are logging in ever since the update, you can expect on the 14th of January for that to happen. We've never had anything really released on a Saturday before, so that's going to be quite weird for My Singing Monsters. Going back to my original thoughts behind this, I think that the cutscene that we've seen is absolutely outstanding. I love the animation behind it, and I cannot wait to see this in game for the first time. I watched it inside of the trailer, but I've made an effort not to watch it again, as I still want to be semi-surprised when I see this thing. Therefore, I've decided not to go back to that trailer whatsoever now, even though it looked absolutely amazing when we were discovering it in the video. The animations behind the Colossi looked absolutely outstanding and really added to the momentum behind the cutscene itself, so I'm really excited behind that aspect, and the singing is very exciting too. I wouldn't have expected that. That is the number one thing for me that has stood out inside of this update. Discovering that is going to be one of the most exciting things in My Singing Monsters history to me. Discovering each Colossal's voice too. They're quite likely to differ amongst the islands, probably the Colossal's voices, so seeing what each one sounds like based on their personalities is going to be interesting, and is probably the best thing that could have happened out of the Colossal's update overall. When we were originally speculating over what the Colossals could add, I think the Colossals' voices was quite an off-topic kind of one where we were like, probably won't, but it would be really cool if it did, and to see it come into fruition is a really cool thing. The Colossals themselves, with the Plant Island one, it looks phenomenal, the design. I am absolutely loving it, and I cannot wait to see all of the rest of them now too. The lore behind this, though, is where it falls apart a little for me. When I'm checking out the lore behind the Colossals, I find it to be quite messy at the moment. At the moment, it's been transcribed that the Colossals, according to Rare Yellowmote's bio, have been theorized to have been awake all along. This goes against the foundations that they have originally built on, and it's cool to get these kinds of reverses sometimes, like with Wubbox we've recently discovered, with that being on Firehaven, where we discovered that Wubbox was originally found inside of the living core, the huge volcano outside of Firehaven, instead of inside of the mines, as it's been described ever since 2013. Sometimes pulling those cards out and making us think differently about things is really cool. But in this case, I get the feeling as though potentially making it so that the Colossals didn't forget how to sing, and also the Colossals have always been awake. It's kind of like you've got this Jenga tower. This is the way that I've been imagining it, and you're pulling out these bricks. First was Wubbox, which was cool, and then the next brick was the Colossals have been awake, which was also quite an interesting turn, and we love that. But then the third break is where the Jenga tower was beginning to fall, and this is where it's described that potentially the Colossals didn't forget how to sing. Now, this hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so I'm really hopeful that we're going to get a reverse turnaround here and there's some kind of lore behind it, because if that Jenga piece is removed, I believe the foundations are going to fall apart here. The reason why I believe this is because for many years, people have theorized behind the Colossals and how they are going to come into the game, and this part being removed removes those theories out of the equation, and it makes it so that actually it was a waste of time theorizing it in the first place. When you're building up a world, I believe it's quite important to establish these foundations and for you not to change them, because if you change them, it kind of breaks up the world and you can't theorize about it. So I'm really hopeful that the lore inside of this is going to establish how the Colossals have remembered how to sing, but it is quite a bit of a concern to me. Also, with this update, we're getting his opinions out there, guys. The update is great. However, I do also think that it could have been revealed so much better. This thing was revealed 24 hours in advance. They even set up the premiere to be 24 hours before. It's always set up the premiere so you can see the countdown about half an hour before the thing, but no, this was 24 hours before. And when you see that Colossal's eye, and we've been waiting for it for years, and it was hyped up to the maximum, therefore, the socials and everything for everyone to be there, and then all of a sudden you have to wait these extra 32 days without us knowing, and the payoff behind it really wasn't worth it, seeing as though they were doing so much fan service inside of that, but they just didn't quite deliver it correctly. When you hype everyone up over that, of course everyone's going to want to check it out the next day. That's the reason why I was saying, oh, why can't I speed it up inside of my reaction, because I was so bewildered by how we've been hyped up towards this thing and been waiting all these years, and they were aware of that inside of the promotional stuff, but then they made us wait even longer without us even knowing, and they'd hyped us up the day before. It was just a bad turnaround, this, and obviously it was going to come out that way, my reaction, seeing as though it was put across like this, but also just the fan service here that they are doing. The update itself is really OP, and honestly, it's everything that I could have asked for, and the Colossals singing, can we talk about that? I am so astounded by that, but it's just the way that it was put across this. The lore behind it is so integral behind the Colossals. These are the creators, again, of the monster world, so having a trailer where they were just shown to be awakening, it was so weird. It was a month before, and they showed all the cutscenes and everything. It was like, here you go, but no, actually, we're not yet. It was like, okay, here we go, but we know you've got to wait even longer now, which is really weird, honestly. And when you're thinking about the Colossals being the creators too, I really would have liked to have seen a trailer behind these guys. It just happened. There was no lore, there was no explanation. It was just the Colossals are here. It was just inside of Rare Yelma, oh, the Colossals might have been awake this whole time, and then they're here. That's the way that it seems to have happened with the lore, and it just feels like it could have been so much more. Hey, that rhymes, doesn't it? I really hope that the update that Tyson is talking about can really enhance upon this and bring about this lore trailer that I was really anticipating. I'm not expecting everything to be revealed or whatever inside of the My Singing Monsters lore. I just really wanted to see how these beings came to life in the first place in the lore, as that hasn't been established, and to me, this probably would have been my most important trailers ever. So it is a bit unfortunate that we didn't get to discover it in a way which would have been an idyllic situation for all of the community to just get us really excited about discovering the rest of the Colossals. So the main takeaway behind this is that the update itself is actually really good, and the main reason why I was kind of disappointed in my theory video after taking some days to figure it out is you gotta take some days to figure out these things, man. The reason why was because it was just revealed quite badly. I don't really know how else to put it. It was just like the trailer, the lore, it was just missing everything that we've known to be true about My Singing Monsters so far. And therefore, I'm hoping that this Jenga tower stays up as we've been describing it, and the piece isn't removed about them forgetting how to sing, but in fact, it's a piece that we're going to figure out about still. It's quite important to me that we still have some foundations inside of the lore that don't go unchanged. I don't know how else to describe it. I'm really excited about the Plant Island Colossal awakening. I honestly don't care how long I've got to wait. I've got to make that clear too. It was just the way they were hyping it up. It seemed like they were going to come that day. So when I couldn't get them that day and it was teased, it was weird. And I don't know how else to describe it. However long I have to wait for the Colossals update, I could never care less, because this is the thing that I want the most. Take all the time that you need. That's why I was saying about taking it in the oven inside of my discovery video, taking more time to perfect this update. I don't think it needed more time in the oven. I think it just needed more preparation time in the oven, so we could have as nice lore drop and trailer, as this thing did deserve a trailer. Out of anything in a franchise, this deserved a lore trailer. This deserves something to compile all of the fan theories and everything over the years all together. That's my theories and my thoughts today anyway. Make sure to let me know what you think down below, but for now, make sure to leave a like and to subscribe too, guys. We will be checking out the Plant Island Colossal in a month from now, but I am very excited for that day. See you later though, guys, for now. Bye, guys.